Signal location, CP274, here we go. Might be a slow trip. Look for a stop signal. Signal indication 282, with permission to reverse in the interlocking. One coming west. As soon as we can move this SEI in, we will get you going east for your work.
Welcome back to Conrail's Onondaga Cutoff. I'm Dave Abeles. It's always a pleasure to spend time with everybody. So I got it's an interesting situation today. We had an operating session last weekend, and it wasn't the smoothest operating session. We had some mechanical defects. We had some trains that didn't quite perform up to our usual standards. And I wanted to make sure that we walked through what you do when things don't operate the way you want them to operate. So we're going to take a look today at a locomotive here that was reported as having some problems. We're going to take a look at what we do to fix it. And first we have to duplicate the problem so we can make sure what's going on. And one of the things you'll see here is that we have paperwork for our Onondaga Cutoff. And at the bottom here we have an issues and a defects. That issues and defects is for each crew to note what might be wrong with their engine or the train. Anything that they capture during the trip that is not up to what should normally be expected of a train. So did something derail consistently? You know, was there a problem with the headlight, or did the sounds not work? Was there a track defect? So our engine number 9549 here, CN 9549, it's a beautiful Athearn Genesis GP40-2L W in parentheses. And that is the Canadian National wide nose safety cab version of the GP42. It's a beautiful model. One of these models that we never thought we'd get in plastic. And because model railroading is just hitting new highs year after year, even month after month these days, we're seeing these gorgeous models in plastic, which makes them affordable for most of us. It's fantastic. But it also means we got to maintain them. So let's take a look and see if we can figure out what's going on here with 9549. Here we go. Alright, so we take our NCE throttle here. These Pro Cab throttles turn on by pressing the red button, the emergency stop, and we can see it boot right up. Tells you which radio version it is on the NCE system, and we'll notice that the little light here begins to blink, and that tells you it's talking to the radio system, which is good. So what this lets us do, regardless of the consist here, now we can press Select Loco. We can enter 9549. Press enter. And there's our 9549. Now the CON stands for consist, and that's because this locomotive is still in a consist with other locomotives. For testing purposes, we can go right ahead and do this as long as we've taken those other two locomotives off the layout, which we have. So in the meantime here, we can turn on our bell. You can hear that loud and clear. So we have control of the locomotive. And what we're going to do is we're going to let it go forward here. Oh, it's because it's in the other way in the consist. So go forward. Now we'll put it in reverse. You can hear the prime mover start up. And we're going to bring it forward nice and slow. And let's see what happens here if we stall out like we had heard we might. There's our culprit right there. And it looks to me like we are not picking up power on both trucks. All right, let's take a closer look at this and see if we can figure out exactly what's going on. So, the engine stalled. And you might say, well, how do you know that's just not power picking up on one truck? Well, I don't know for sure. But all these accident investigations or investigating unusual occurrences, mechanical problems or what have you, all of this comes down to a process of elimination. And I know the railroad pretty well. I know these locomotives pretty well. Been around the block a few times, and so I can jump to a conclusion, which is the most likely. But let's take a look at why I can make that conclusion. A little detail here on the switch I want to show you. All right, so we have a stock Walthers Shina-Harris switch here, which I've installed on the main line of the Onondaga Cutoff. This is main track number 2, main track number 1, and this is the number 1 crossover within CP277. So what we see here is the whole switch has different parts. These are the points here. The points move. Okay, and that guides the train to one track or the other. Then we have these stock rails, just the outside rails here. And this is the important part of the switch called the frog, nicknamed because it looks like the leg of a frog going in 4 directions. But this is basically a casting, a separate piece of the switch. You can see insulated with joints here and right there. And on my layout, I don't power the frogs. Most locomotives can bridge them pretty well as long as everything's picking up electricity. And it causes a lot more wiring under the layout. Many people will wire their frogs, and there's certainly nothing wrong with it. In fact, it does work well for certain locomotives, especially brass locomotives and older locomotives that don't have a lot of wheels picking up electricity. But because most of mine do, I'm able to get away without having to worry about that. But it also provides a great opportunity to take a look at what happens when locomotives are also misbehaving. So let's try this again. We have our 9549, so let's bring him forward again, and with that unpowered frog, let's see what happens here. Front truck goes along okay. But as soon as that back truck is on the frog, we can tell that we're not getting power because the engine stalls. So to me, there is a wire that's not working on the other side of the locomotive. We know we're not getting power on this side. This is on a powered rail, so we know we're getting power there. My guess is that we're not picking up electricity on the far side of the locomotive down below because the rail's hot, but the engine's not getting power, and so we see our stall here. So I think we need to take this locomotive apart. We've got to take a look at that back truck and see what we can figure out. And another surefire way to test this, we're going to move it over here where there's no frog. We start back up again, right? Now let's see what happens if we lift up that back truck. Lift it up gently, and the engine's still running. What happens if we lift up the front truck? Yeah, it's working, but it's intermittent. I got a hunch that we might have a loose connection in that back truck. Let's see how this goes. All right, here we are at the workbench now. We have our CN 9549 ready to take a look at. My trusty foam holder here. I created this a while back out of some packaging, I think from a computer that we bought. But I just cut a narrow slit in the foam, which fits the top of these locomotives fairly well. So we're going to take our foam, we're going to squeeze it over the top there, and then gently set things down. Foam holders like this are easy to make yourself. They also are commercially available from a variety of different sources. But it really helps protect some of the nice details on your locomotive while you're working. So what we're going to do is disassemble this back truck and take a look at the wiring and see how it looks, see if it's up to snuff. So let's dig right in. I'll zoom you guys in so you can get a really good look. Video number 6, Lionel. All right, so got to be a little careful with these later model Athearn and other manufactured locomotives because you can't just pluck the side frames off to take a look at what's inside. You can see if we look very carefully here that there's little clips. I'll take this out so you guys can get a real good look. Guys and girls, not to discriminate at all, of course. If you look right about here, it's sort of dark there, I know. Let's see if we can get one that's got a little better light on it. There's one that's got some better light. right in here, there's a very fine plastic clip that loops over and holds the whole bottom gear cover here on the side of the truck. So as long as we're very gentle, we're going to be able to wiggle our old X-Acto blade in there. This is just an old X-Acto. You can see the little pin come off. There we go. Right inside, just very gently. Slow and steady wins the race with these. And an old X-Acto knife works really well for this because it's not too sharp. It's actually not sharp at all. Okay, so you're not doing any damage to the plastic. This is just a nice thin blade that you can go in and use to pry those covers away. And so now, if we look, zoom you right in, I'll turn this right around again. We can see that our cover here is coming loose. And it's just a little, again, that one snapped back on, and this happens sometimes. I'm just going to go back in there again, and we're going to pry it out. Might take a couple times here. But that is okay, because again, little by little, this is how we maintain things. And this may look like delicate surgery, you know, it may look like it's something that's really difficult to do, but it's not. And the key here, slow and steady. This is how we maintain things. And these models are too nice to not have running in good condition. So now we can see right into the guts of this truck. There's our gear train. Okay, there's our axles, the wheels with their gears and the gears in the middle. And what this will let us do now is just carefully be able to use our knife again here, and we can just gently, ever so gently, pry those truck frames off. And again, they can be a little bit stubborn, a little bit stiff. That's all right. All right, now that we pulled it out a little bit, you guys, here we go. You can see that this wire here is loose. Well, it's in there tight enough. I have a feeling the fact that it's out of its casing like that a little bit means that we got to take a look and see exactly what we're dealing with here. So I'm going to take my needle nose pliers. I've had these since I was in like 7th grade. And we're going to remove that wire from the brass behind the truck side frame there. All right, and now it looks to me like we might have a little bit of a cold solder joint there. That wire does move a little bit, as we can see. So we're going to solder that up. Stand by. I'm going to heat up the soldering iron. One of the things you can do while we're waiting for that soldering iron to heat up is we can take a little bit of cloth or paper and a toothpick and clean out those axle holes a little bit. You can see actually quite a bit of grit and grime after years of use. So that's not certainly helping electrical conductivity. So we're going to clean out those little friction bearings in there. That one's much cleaner. And likewise, we can take our wheels, axles, and do the same thing. Just wipe off the ends. That's fairly clean, but that one's got some grit on it, so little by little here, we're making some progress on cleaning things up. Why do we go through all this problem? Why do we go through all this trouble? Well, again, if you're going to do something in life, it's worth it to take the time to do it right. It could be model trains, you know, it could be a landscaping project, could be making dinner for your family, could be driving to work, you know, or doing a work report. Whatever it is that you're doing, if you can make an incremental piece of progress, just something small, put a little bit of pride into what you're doing, I really feel that there's a satisfaction there that, you know, modern society with our quick hits and our, you know, we're always on our phones, we're looking for the next greatest thrill, always communicating, doing 5 things at once. there's a lot to be said for taking a deep breath and deep diving into a maintenance project like this. Josh Bowman, right? First guy that signed up for this entire thing. Josh, thank you so much. Josh is a guy that does mechanics for a living. He works on tractors and heavy equipment, owns a farm. And Josh will tell you too, you jump into a maintenance project, either it works or it doesn't, or it works incrementally or it works perfectly. And you put in some time and some effort and you can really improve something's condition, the way something works. That's a great experience in life, to be able to feel satisfied that you fixed something, that you repaired something, that you made something better, and that you can share that with somebody else. So that's really why we're getting into the nitty-gritty. Sure, I could send it back to Athearn, and in a few months they'd fix it and send it back, and you know, that is one way to do it, and there's nothing wrong with that approach. But repairs like this are an opportunity. It's not that it's a better or worse way of doing things. This way makes sure that the repair that gets made, the repair is going to be good either way. This way makes sure that you get the satisfaction of having repaired it yourself. It's always worth trying to do that, in my opinion, before you dive in and send it to someplace else. Dive in yourself and give it a shot. So let's get back to the repair here. Our iron's hot. We'll solder this up. We'll take a look at where we stand. The first thing we need to do is use a little bit of flux. Flux is a paste, a solder paste. It comes in a little container like this and helps the solder to flow. So the first thing we're going to do is put just a little bit of flux on the brass there and a little bit of flux on our bare wire. Not too much. Doesn't take much. We're going to take our hot soldering iron. Okay, this is just a basic soldering iron from Micromark. And some solder wire. I picked this up at the local electronics store. Got to make sure that your wire, your solder wire that is, this is a mixture of lead and tin, and it's got a rosin or flux core, called a rosin core solder. So what that does, it has its own little flux inside, and it's nice thin, and it's designed expressly for electrical. Have to make sure you're using electrical solder. So all we do is take a tiny little bit of solder here, touch it to the tip, and you can see how it melts right up. And then we're just going to touch that over here to the wire. Because of the flux, you can see how it flows right down immediately. It fills that whole thing with solder. And then we're going to do the same thing on our flux here. We're just going to touch it, and we're going to get a nice little solder pad. They call this tinning the joint. The next thing I like to do is make sure that we're only dealing with enough of the wire that we have to solder. So you don't need that whole big piece. So I'm going to take a clippers and we'll clip it down to a more manageable size. Now you can see it's nice and short, which makes sure that we don't have too much exposed wire, and that way we don't have to worry about putting a sleeving on it like we just did. Like we just removed from Athearn, I should say. All right, a little bit more solder here, not too much, just a little touch. Now we're going to take our solder pad, going to line it up with that wire, and just a quick touch. And because we soldered already the wire and the pad, we let that cool. And now we have a very nice tight joint between the brass pickup on the truck side frame and the wire. So now we can start to reassemble. You can see the tiny little holes here. That's these little guys. Those lock in. So we're going to put those in on both sides once we get our two axles back in place. So we're going to set those in place first. Again, little by little, part by part. And now we can get one side started here. All right, let's give it a try. This is the way we test to see if our repairs work and if we were successful the first time around, or if we're going to have to try something else. But here's our points. We got another switch with points. We have our stock rails, and here's our unpowered frog. So when a truck is on the unpowered frog, the other truck has to pick up electricity. Let's see if our engine operates through with no stalls. Here we go. There's our bell. There's our 9549. Let's see what happens here. Nice and slow so we can check to see what goes on when the trucks cross that unpowered frog. Look at that. Woo-hoo-hoo! Oh, that's a good feeling, everybody. That's a good feeling. That was our problem over there at CP277. And it looks to me like we're operating smoothly through switches now. Well, there we have it, everyone. Not the easiest repair in the world, but it's a repair that we were able to accomplish here in one evening. We soldered up what looked like a loose solder joint, and sure enough, our engine's operating reliably now through switches with an unpowered frog, which is our standard here on the Onondaga Cutoff. So, look, little by little, you chip away at these things, you're able to maintain it, get a little bit of satisfaction out of it, you're making something small better. Yeah, it's just model railroading, but it's something that we can do well, something we can show some pride in, and something that we can bring people together on, so long as we're always working towards continuous quality improvement. Thanks for joining me. I'm Dave Abeles. As always, I appreciate your time with me here on the Onondaga Cutoff. We'll talk to you soon. See you next time.
Light came through my window just before the break of day. Sun-soaked waves now beckon me, so I'll be on my way. On a path that's overgrown. It's a long way back home. I was trapped and lonely, wondering what I'm going through. Waiting for the winds of change to tell me what to do. And